Well, welcome to episode 67 of the Family Answer Man podcast. Today, we're looking at anxiety in children in times of uncertainty from a biblical worldview on the Family Answer Man podcast. I'm your host, David Orges, and I'm here with Dr. Mark Crosby, pastor, educator, marriage and family therapist, and the resident expert here on the Family Answer Man podcast, where we tackle tough questions that families face and discuss practical solutions that really do work. Now, this podcast is not a therapy session. We're not able to give specific advice to your situations, but we do believe that mental health and spiritual health are very serious issues, and family dynamics can be and often are very complicated. So, for in-depth answers to your questions, we encourage you to seek professional counsel specific to your unique circumstances. Now, if you would take a second right now to subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit that bell so you never miss an episode of the Family Answer Man. And if you're listening via podcast, take a moment to follow us, to rate and review us on your favorite podcast app, because it really does help us out, and we greatly appreciate your support. Now, if our content has helped you at all, please share the Family Answer Man with your family and your friends so they can join you on this journey of building stronger, healthier, and happier families. Well, Dr. Mark, we talk a lot of times about your credentials as a pastor, as a mental health clinician. Also, you have a law degree. Sometimes we don't mention as much, though, and we have in the past, but that you are a father of three. And so today's topic, father of three and grandfather of eight.
Yes.
So today's topic is something that I'm sure you've probably had to deal with in your own personal experience in the past.
Anxiety in children. Those things are things that are issues that every parent, every grandparent is going to experience, because these are some very difficult times. And kids, especially, and grandchildren as well, are going to be exposed to a lot of things via social media and other platforms that are available, not to mention just good old-fashioned TV.
Right.
So there's a lot of information that's coming, into the lives of our children. And some children aren't quite sure how to process it. Some children are naturally, genetically, if you will, are going to be more anxious than others. Some children are very much aware of what's going on in the world. Some have no clue,
Right.
As long as, there's pizza in the oven and, their switch is working or whatever, and they can play Nintendo and go outside and, ride their bike maybe, then life's good. But there are some children that are very much aware of what's happening in not only their own neighborhood and community, but also around the world. And depending on who they are, what's going on, and the images they see, and again, just to kind of focus on that for a moment, when they see images that they can relate to, maybe a child in a car accident, or a child that's in some sort of third world country condition, a famine or what have you. Sometimes some children are so sensitive that they take that to heart, and they begin to ask themselves, what if that were me, or what if that were my family, or what if we were going through that, or what if I lived there, and so many times they'll ask, what can we do, or how can we prevent this from happening to us, or will we ever, be in a situation like this, mom or dad? And so parents today have a great challenge on how to, either A, shelter their children from that sort of thing, or B, how to answer the hard questions, such as what's happening in Israel, or what's happening, in various other parts of the world where they see graphic images of children, in peril.
And that's why we are here today, is to help answer those questions for parents as they attempt to answer and help their children manage some of their anxieties that they have. So that leads to our question for the day for Family Answer Man. And if you would like to get in touch with us, you can email us, familyanswerman@liveoak.church, familyanswerman@liveoak.church, and we would love to hear from you, hear your encouragement, hear maybe testimonies about how the Family Answer Man has been impactful for you and for your family, or for you to ask questions.
Yes.
And our question for today says my kids are 10, 13, 16, and 20. All live at home. All are concerned about the current events in the world, politics, and the war in Israel. All four of my children are worried about this war and the impact that it could have on our nation and our family. What do you suggest we do about their anxiety?
Well, yeah, like I said, there are some children, there are some families that are very much aware of what's happening in the country and around the world. And many of them, they look at various YouTube channels, they look at various things on social media. They listen to sermons, perhaps, that, again, address some of these things. And so I think it's safe to say that a lot of our children are more aware today than we were, say, 50 years ago as far as current events. And the reality is many recognize that these are perilous times. Many children in our region, for example, have experienced many traumatic events. For the last 2 or 3 years, we experienced COVID, which impacted children, not only their school, but also their social interactions and lives. Hurricane Ida came through a couple of years ago and definitely impacted our community. Of course, there was a flood a few years ago, and there's drought, and there's record-breaking heat, and kids are having to stay inside and all that during the summertime. So the point is that they are living through some very unique and perilous times, and there's a lot of concern out there that comes with that, especially if they hear about a drought that could cause a food shortage, or if they hear of a resurgence of COVID and what that may mean for their school, or now it's the war in Israel, and many will argue that what happened on October the 7th, 2023, was very similar to 9/11. 2001, very similar to Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, as it was indeed a sneak attack. Men, women, and children were killed. The war is still going on. There are some very graphic images that are on various social media platforms. And so children are hearing of the beheadings. They're hearing of, people being brutally, killed and all these things. Yeah. And many of them are quite afraid as to what about their family, what about their home, what about, their neighborhood, their community here in America. And especially when there are various pastors and politicians saying this could happen here. And the open border debate and all that goes with that. So there are kids who are listening, and they're being very much aware of what's happening. So whenever this sort of thing happens, children are uncertain of what is happening, and they take their emotional cue, however, from their parent.
Yes.
So many times, I'm not discounting this, but so many times when our kids get anxious or struggle with some sort of anxiety disorder, we automatically want to call, the school counselor or the local counselor in the community or whatever to help them work that out, which is a wonderful thing. I'm not discounting that. But the truth of the matter is that sometimes if the parent is managing their anxiety, the children often can keep a sense of calm.
Yes.
So if the children are listening to the parent, and the parent is struggling with anxiety, the parent is struggling with what to do, if the parent is upset as to what's happening in Israel or around the world, if a parent is fearful, if you will, of what could happen, children will take their cue from their parent. And so the principle is simply this, that each child, no matter their age or gender, has unique needs, but a healthy relationship with a parent can support them all.
Wow, say that again. That's really good.
Yeah, I said each child, no matter their age or gender, has unique needs, but a healthy relationship with a parent can support them all.
Wow.
And once a parent understands that, once a parent embraces that, once a parent really recognizes the depth of that principle and begins to now realize that what they say, what they do, how they live, how they respond to the world and to their family and to their community directly impacts their child, then they can be a little more sensitive as well as to how they control and how they manage their anxiety. So if your child is facing anxiety, if your child is facing worry, they're seeing things, they're hearing things, again, on social media, they're hearing things from their peers, they're hearing things from, other individuals perhaps. So as they begin to face these things, here are some principles that I want parents to remember and also to apply.
Okay.
And these principles basically, again, to answer this question, kind of helps to work through and manage and to figure out what we can do as parents to reduce the anxiety in our home especially, but also the anxiety that's found in our children. So here's some of the principles. Number one, mom and dad, remember this. When it comes to anxiety in your children, you're the architect of your home. You are the architect of your home. You as the parent, you set the mood. You set the mood as to how things are going to be in your home. You set the boundaries, which means as the parent, your anxiety is going to impact your children. So whatever level your anxiety is in your life, it's going to directly impact the anxiety in the life of your children. Now, again, some children are more prone to anxiety than others, but the reality is that if a child sees that their parent is worried, the parent's upset, what's going to happen next? Is this World War III? Or should we, start doing something radical as far as, what may be happening in our life or in our community or in our home or in our nation? That's going to raise the anxiety in the child. So the point is, to moms and dads, how you manage your anxiety impacts your children. The formula that I often encourage parents to think about when managing their anxiety basically all starts with the letter P. Okay. So the first thing I will encourage parents to do to manage their anxiety so their children can manage their anxiety is, number one, pray. Prayer is something that we all talk about, something we all do, something we all say we need to do. But the reality is prayer really does make a difference when dealing with anxiety. And so spending time in prayer, praying with your children, praying, alone, praying with your spouse. But prayer is important. Next, preparing. If there's something that you're worried about, again, if there is some bad weather coming, if there is something that is on the horizon that you're concerned about, then start preparing. Prepare yourself, prepare your family. Number 3, get people involved, get professionals involved. If you're not quite sure what to do, not quite sure how to handle something, maybe it's a financial problem you're dealing with, and get professionals to get involved. And then plan. Plan for what may happen. Plan for all the things that could go right or could go wrong, and then perform. If you have to implement the plan, if you have to put it into action, then perform and see how things work out, see how things happen, and then demonstrate, this to your kids. Hey, we had a hurricane coming, or we saw some bad weather coming, and we prepared. We had the generator out, we got the candles out, and look, lights went out for a few hours, but you know what? We had candles on, we had the generator going, we could still read a book or play checkers. We got through the night, and you know what? Everything's fine the next day. And so that sort of thing really begins to reduce anxiety, because so many children are fearful of bad weather, maybe because their parents didn't handle bad weather very well. Or any scenario or example along those lines. Number 2, don't let anxiety determine your decisions. Don't let anxiety determine your decisions. For example, I was raised in a generation where the movie Jaws came out in 1975. And in the summer of 1975, fewer people went to the beach than the year before, because the anxiety was so high that there was a fear that there was going to be a shark attack, right? And it was crazy. I had people even say to me back, 50 years ago, hey, we're not even going to get into my kids won't even go into a pool, because there's a fear of some sort of shark attack. Well, the point is that you don't let anxiety determine your decision. Go to the beach, yes, do things that keep you safe. A lot of parents, we don't go to the beach because of, we fear riptides. Okay. Be mindful of what flags are out. If it's a double flag day, then you don't go in the water.
Stay away,
but the thing is, yes, do things that keep you safe. Yes, figure out what would be the wise thing to do. But the reality is, you don't let anxiety determine your decisions. And so many times a parent will ruin the vacation by saying, we're not going to the beach because, there's some rip currents and there's some sharks being sighted. Well, doesn't mean you have to go into the water, doesn't mean you have to end your vacation, doesn't mean you have to, alter your plans entirely. But what's happening here is that we're not just being careful, we're letting anxiety determine our decisions.
Right, and there's a difference between being careful and wise and being controlled by your anxiety.
Exactly, and that's happens. And so when a child sees a parent doing that, then they will follow suit. Yes, lock your doors. Yes, wear a seatbelt. Yes, use hand sanitizer. But also talk it out, figure it out, face the issue. You may even say to your children, you know what, we may avoid going into the water because the riptides are high today or whatever, and so we may do something different. We may spend time, in the hotel swimming pool or whatever it may be, but you don't in the vacation. You don't disappoint the children over your anxiety. But you talk it out, you figure it out, and you face the issue. And you demonstrate we can still do things. We can still travel. We can still go on vacation. We're not going to let anxiety keep us from doing fun things. Number 3, parents, it's okay to be sensitive to those who are hurting, to those who are suffering. So if your child does see an image, for example, of a mother crying over the loss of her child there in Israel because of Hamas attack or whatever, and they're sensitive, it's okay to realize they're hurting, that they're, sensitive to the situation. But think about what you can do. Think about what can be done. Seek answers, maybe even help someone. There's a lot of people who are sending basically boxes of aid, to this region. Many are helping and working in their churches to do things along these lines. Some are sending money. One for Israel, I believe, is a website that some are going to help the situation. The point is that if you see your child is sensitive, if you see your child is concerned, ask your child, what do you think we can do? Yeah. How can we get involved? How can we help, someone who's struggling? How can we help that little boy, that little girl who lost their home in a bomb or in an air raid or whatever? And so by doing that, they're realizing I can do something.
Right. It helps connect their empathy to action.
Exactly. Rather than just sitting there wringing their hands, being, helpless or feeling helpless as to what they can do, figure out what you can do. And that begins to lower the anxiety, and it also helps them to realize, when you begin, as you said, put things into action, things do get better. Fourthly, don't avoid whatever your child is anxious about. So don't avoid it. In other words, help the child to face it slowly. So in other words, if the child is concerned about something that is, very worrisome and frightening to them, ask them to look at what's really going on here and what is perceived. What is really going on here and what is perceived. And so if they say, well, I don't want to go to the beach because I want to get eaten by a shark, well, okay, that's a possibility, but the reality is that you're not going to get bit by a shark, and we'll just go ankle deep and we'll do wise things, and we're not going to, go after, sundown or whatever it may be. Right. But in other words, ask them, what is it that you're most afraid of, and then help them to face it slowly. Yeah. It's okay to go into the water ankle deep, and maybe even, chest deep or whatever. But the point is that you begin to show them slowly that there's really nothing to worry about in this situation, whatever that situation may be. So when it comes to keeping anxiety lowered, there's certain things that I think every son needs from their dad, certain things that every son needs from their mother, certain things every daughter needs from their dad, and certain things every daughter needs from their mom. And so I kind of want to unpack that just a little bit, because as a child's needs are being met by their parent, then what begins to happen is their anxiety begins to lower, or they begin to manage their anxiety a little better. We talk a lot about in marriage therapy, the needs of a wife, the needs of a husband, and how to meet those needs one to the other. But what we don't talk a whole lot about in many circles and in many situations is, what does a son need from a dad? And what does a daughter need from a dad? And what does a mother or a son need from a mom? And what does a daughter need from a mom? And so the point is that these are some things that we need to talk about. And again, this is not an endless list, or this is not the only list, or this is not the best list, but these are some things that I have seen in my practice that have been helpful. Some of the people that I subscribe to, as far as the quote-unquote experts, these are some of the things they share and say. And so these are some of the things I just kind of want to mention to the parents who are listening, that these are some things that your kids need from you. So let's look at, what do sons need from dads?
Okay.
We'll start there. What do sons need from dads? And some of these things we've said before, but number one, they need time. Again, as we've said time and time again, a child spells love T-I-M-E. Right. So sons really do need time with their dad. Number two, they need for their dads to talk with them, but not at them. And there is a difference. Sons need dads to talk with them, but not at them. And so many times dads, I think we're all guilty of this at some point, want to lecture, want to preach, want to
give advice,
want to, do all these things, but sometimes a son just wants to talk with his dad. One of the great examples that we've seen 1,000 times, on television that happened back in the 60s was the Andy Griffith Show.
Oh yeah.
I love that series. I love that show. It ran for about 5 to 8 years back in the 60s. But there was nothing better than to see Andy and Opie talking, and there's a lot of great psychological and family wisdom that came out of those programs. But anyway, talking with your son instead of talking at them. Number 3, teaching them in a way that's fun. Dads, teach your son how to cut the grass or how to change a tire or how to, clean a fish or whatever it may be. But teaching their son, how to throw a football. But teaching them is so important and so necessary. And the more you do that, the greater the attachment you're creating. Number 4, discovering talent. Discovering your son's talent and letting him know, I think you're talented in this. I think you're great at throwing a football, throwing a baseball. I think you're great at, fixing this or taking care of that, or I think you're really good at organizing, whatever it may be. But discovering their talent and really letting them know, I'm noticing you. I'm noticing the talent that you're demonstrating. Also, the next one, if you're keeping track, this is number 5, do things together that you can accomplish and look back and say, this is what we did.
Okay.
We built this, we fixed that, we, won that together. But together accomplishments is what I call them. And also, again, and this is very important to note, but dads need to teach their sons what I call a tough tenderness.
Okay, tough tenderness.
And that is, it's okay to be tough. We need to be tough. But it's okay to be tender. We need to be tender. Don't always be tender. Don't always be tough. But have a tough tenderness. Again, if we're going to continue the TV series theme for a moment, back in the 70s, there was of course, I'm always dating myself, right? But back in the 70s, there was a TV series called Kung Fu, starring David Carradine. And David Carradine had that tough tenderness. He was a very, meek, mild, person, very tender, in many areas. But, he was this Kung Fu expert. Yeah. So when the outlaw, or the bandito or whomever would attack him, he would, kick him and throw him and knock him and, choke him and armbar him or whatever it is, that he would do in this program. And there was that tough tenderness. And I think sometimes we as dads don't give that enough to our sons. And our sons need to understand when to be tough and when to be tender. And then number 7, if you're keeping track, theological reflections. I think dads need to have those discussions with their sons about who is God? Where does God fit into this? And how is God going to help us in this area? Next, daughters need from their dads. What do daughters need from their dads? And again, this is no particular order, and there's many, many things that we can say, but these are some of the ones, again, that I've subscribed to. Real quickly, protection. Daughters need to know their dads will protect them.
Yes.
And that is powerful, and that is important, and it's never been more needed than it is today. Next, provision. That dads will provide for their daughters. That dads will be there and making sure their daughters have what they need. Next is blessing. Daughters need to know that their dads will bless them. Speaking into their life, the joy, speaking into their life, the dedication, speaking into their life, the loyalty they have for their daughters. And then next is boundaries. Sometimes dads have to be the ones that set up the boundaries. There's certain, you can go this far, but not this far. You can have this person over, but not that person. You have to be in by this time kind of thing. But protection, provision, blessing, and boundaries are so important. 3 other things. Being available. Dads need to be available. Daughters need to know that if I need my dad and he's in his study or he's in his shop or he's in his, car or whatever it may be, or he's in his office, and I can see him, I can go to him, and he will be available to me. Yeah. And then next, dads need to make sure that their daughters know they're accepted by them. That acceptance is so very important. And just like guys need a tough tenderness, I think girls need a tender toughness.
Okay.
And meaning, hey, it's important to be tender. It's important to be sensitive. It's important. But there's times when you'd have to be tough because life is not always easy, and sometimes it can be very cruel. Yeah. And that's very important to note. So what do daughters need from their moms? And this is a unique dynamic, especially as daughters get older, with moms. But number one, I think what daughters need from moms is a sense of self-confidence. Okay. Moms need to bring that self-confidence into the life of their daughters. Next, also very similar to what we said a while ago, and they also need acceptance from mom, that they feel an acceptance from their mom. Moms are the ones that often can comfort them. As their hearts are breaking, or as they didn't, make a certain organization, or if they didn't, win, or they only got third place out of whatever. But moms can be very comforting, more so in some cases than dads. Moms also can be the great encourager. And so just encouraging them and being that great encourager. Also, moms, I think, are great about making and creating a sense of independence in the life of their daughters. That sometimes daughters need to realize, and moms can be good at doing this, in teaching their daughters on how to be independent. Because when you're independent, then you can then allow yourself, when you need to be dependent. Yeah. That's why I encourage people, a little sidebar, especially, daughters, to live on your own for a while before you get married. You live with your mom and dad, live on your own for a while. I'm not saying not just in the dormitory in college, but live on your own where you're paying your own bills and you're doing your own thing. And then also moms are great at what I call positive cognitive schemas. In other words, helping their daughters to have a positive understanding of life, themselves, a positive understanding of what is happening, and so they're not seeing things always through a negative lens. And finally, what do sons need from their moms? This is very important to note as well. But sons need from their moms a sense of warmth. That there's a sense of connection and closeness there. They too also need encouragement from moms. Moms are the number one encourager in many cases. Also social skills. Again, how to open the door, for the young lady, or how to, be polite, and how to say yes, ma'am, to your teacher, or whatever it may be. But certain social skills, how to, do things or not do things in certain social settings. Also creating positive reinforcement, being non-critical. So many times I think we as parents and moms sometimes with sons can come across very critical or very coercive. And sometimes that creates a negative relationship between the son and the mom. So these are some things, again, that as we are facing some very perilous times, as we are facing perhaps some things that we have not faced in a long, long time, if ever, these are some things that I think we as parents can do to lessen the anxiety of our children, to create an environment within the home where they feel calm, where they feel safe, where they feel secure, where they have a sense of structure and stability. Because my concern is this, and we'll close with this, my concern is that what's happening in Israel, what has happened, in this decade is really extremely unique and has the potential, as far as the war in Israel, of perhaps getting worse if we're not careful. Yeah. Each passing day, and we're only in day 4, but each passing day, the reports are getting more concerning and more brutal, and things seem to be expanding. And so we as parents, if ever there was a time to bring a sense of calm and hope and peace and prayer into our family, it's now. It's up to us. We're the architects, and that's how we reduce the anxiety in our children.
Well, there you have it from the Family Answer Man. You as parents are able to set the tone for your family and for your kids. And that is a great challenge for all of us. I want to say thank you for joining us today on the Family Answer Man. As a reminder, this is not a therapy session. We're not able to give specific advice to your unique circumstances, but we do hope that today's episode has led you and inspired you to make changes that will lead to a stronger, healthier, happier family.